variety of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that are all adequate for good health. Canada's Food Guide is also an online tool that has many tips, recipes, and resources. So if you're comfortable using the internet, that's definitely something that I would recommend checking out. And it's adopted the healthy plate model. So as you can see up here on the screen, that includes filling half of your plate with vegetables and fruits, a quarter of your plate with whole grain foods, and then the last quarter of your plate with protein foods such as meat, eggs, dairy, as well as plant-based proteins such as beans or chickpeas. So we'll go into each group a little bit more. So the first one is vegetables and fruits. So the vegetables and fruits, as I mentioned before, should take up about half of your plate. And this is because they have a lot of nutrients, and as well as fiber. So we've all been told at least once in our lives that we should be eating vegetables and fruits. But despite this, most Canadians aren't getting enough, even though we know about the countless benefits. So throughout the presentation, we'll talk about a few tips that we have about getting uh, all the fruits and vegetables you need. So another thing about fruits and vegetables is we like to recommend the 50-50 rule. And what that means is making half of the fruits and vegetables fruits and then half of them vegetables. And that's really because fruits tend to be higher in sugar. And although this is natural sugar and it also contains a lot of vitamins that are good for you, we want to spread that out throughout the day in order to avoid high spikes in blood sugar. We also want to aim for color and variety. So a general recommendation we make for this is to eat one orange vegetable and one leafy green vegetable per day, and that's to make sure you're getting a variety of those different nutrients. As well, we recommend having a vegetable or fruit at every meal and snack in order to reach the recommendations. And then frozen and canned vegetables and fruits are also very good for you. If you aren't able to get fresh because it's not available or it may be out of season and too expensive. So that's another great way that you can get your fruits and vegetables.
All right. So whole grain foods is the next one. So we want to aim to fill about 1/4 of your plate with whole grain foods, as Brianne just mentioned. So whole grains are a healthier alternative compared to refined white grains, as research shows that people who eat more whole grains may have a lower risk of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and some cancers. So this is because whole grains include all three parts of the kernel, which are the bran, endosperm, and the germ. So these parts of the kernel, particularly the bran and the germ, contribute to a higher amount of fiber, vitamins, and minerals in the grain. So more of that kernel is good. Refined white grains have most or all of the bran and germ removed, resulting in lower amounts of fiber, vitamins, and minerals. So this means you will definitely get a greater health benefit from eating those whole grain foods instead of refined grain products. And just as we said here, fiber is higher in whole grain foods. And so fiber in particular has many health benefits, including maintaining bowel health and aiding in weight management, as it helps to helps you to feel full. So now that we've talked about the benefits, some examples of whole grain foods include quinoa, whole grain rice, bread, pasta, and whole oats or oatmeal. As you can see, almost all of these examples say whole grain at the beginning. So just to take note that whole wheat and multigrain are actually not the same as whole grain. Whole wheat flour has had most of the germ and some of the bran removed. So just remember, more of that kernel is good because it has more stuff in it. So even if a grain food looks brown, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a whole grain. This doesn't mean it's unhealthy, however, but we do want to try to choose foods that are higher in fiber when possible. But as a side note, if you see whole grain, whole wheat flour, this is considered a whole grain. So now that we've talked about some examples here, so two tips when you're checking if your food products are whole grains. First thing you can do is look for this whole grain stamp, which is by the Whole Grain Council on your food products. So it's the yellow stamp that's on the slide there. If you see that, it means it's a whole grain. The next thing you can do as well is look at the nutrition facts table to see how much fiber the food contains. So a high fiber food contains 4 or more grams of fiber per serving. So you can see that the label on the slide, it might be a little bit small, but you can see it says dietary fiber is 4 grams. Another thing is you can look at the percent daily value. So you want to aim for 5% or higher for fiber. And as you can see on the slide, it says it's 14%. So that's exactly what we want.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Talia. So we'll now look at the last quarter of our plate. So this is the protein food section. So the protein foods provide essential nutrients such as protein, vitamins, minerals such as calcium, vitamin D, zinc, and iron. Protein is a very important nutrient when it comes to building and maintaining muscle as we age. So plant-based proteins, I'll provide some examples in the next slide, but the plant-based proteins do provide more fiber and less saturated fat than other types of protein foods, and this can be beneficial for your heart health. So here are some examples of protein foods. So things like nuts, seeds, beans, peas, lentils, fortified soy beverage, tofu, and soybeans are all examples of plant-based proteins. And then eggs, lean cuts of beef, pork, poultry, fish, and shellfish, and lower fat dairy products are examples of animal-based proteins. So plant-based proteins are cheaper and easier to make, and they do come in canned versions, but if you do rinse them and soak them overnight and then boil them, you can ensure that you're decreasing the sodium value there. And you can also cook animal or plant-based proteins in large batches and freeze them when you aren't going to use them right away, and they can be added into sauces and soups in order to boost the protein content.
All right, those are kind of the general healthy eating recommendations that we have for everyone, but there are a couple recommendations as you get older. Our bodies are changing, so we're going to need different nutrients. So the first one I'll talk about is calcium. And the benefits of calcium include that it helps build and maintain strong bones and teeth, and it also helps to reduce the risk of fractures. And calcium can be found in dairy milk, fortified plant-based beverages, dark leafy greens, and canned fish. Uh, oh, just back one, Rajni. Thank you. So next we have vitamin D, and similar to calcium, it helps build strong bones, and it also helps with immune health. So this can be found in fatty fish, fortified dairy, soy, and grain products, as well as egg yolks. So there's not too many foods that we can get adequate sources of vitamin D. So we do recommend in Canada that adults over the age of 50 take a vitamin D supplement in order to meet that recommendation. And now next we'll talk about hydration. So as you age, your sense of thirst may decline, but you still need to drink water regularly in order to keep your body hydrated, regulate temperature, replace water lost, and to protect your joints and tissues. So some tips on how to stay hydrated include carrying a water bottle, setting reminders to drink water, adding flavor to your water with fruit or herbs, and also you can satisfy your thirst with water by replacing water with replacing sugary drinks with water. Uh, Other foods and drinks that can help you stay hydrated include lower fat white milk, low sodium soups, vegetables and fruits, as well as unsweetened fortified soy beverages.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to mute yourself. Okay. So now that we just talked about some kind of nutrients and things we want to focus on as we are getting a little older, let's put it into some examples. So we have here a snack, which is a bowl of blueberries. So I just want to ask everyone, how can we add more calcium to this snack? So feel free to maybe put it in the chat so we don't have to worry about unmuting and muting ourselves. And we'll just have a little bit of a discussion going in the chat if you want. And we'll see what we get. So just adding more calcium to this bowl of blueberries. How can we do that? Okay, I see add yogurt. That's a great one. So yeah, we could mix in yogurt with these blueberries. If it's Greek yogurt as well, that could also be a great source of protein too. Awesome, thank you. Something else, I guess, you could even just have a glass of milk on the side, or if you want to have like a slice of cheese or something, but I think yogurt is definitely a great one. Oh yes, almonds. Almonds are also a source of calcium. Awesome. All right, so the next one here is we have some whole grain crackers. So how could we add some more vitamin D to this snack? You can remember back to maybe some of the examples Brianne gave. Extra old cheddar. If that one is for this one, yeah, that could work if it's like a cheese fortified with vitamin D. Okay, this one's a trickier one, but you could also add a hard-boiled egg, as Brianna was saying, in the yolk. There's some vitamin D. You could also add something like tuna. Like you can, I know that people enjoy eating tuna with crackers, and those fatty fish is a good source of vitamin D as well. So the next one we have here is, let's say this is lunch or dinner, or we're just having a meal, and it's a green salad. So how could we add some more protein to this meal? There's lots of options for this one, for sure. Chicken, eggs, yeah. Both great options. Sometimes you can make it like a little Cobb salad with the hard-boiled eggs. Maybe I'll wait for one more if anyone else has any ideas, or I can keep going. Yeah, cottage cheese actually is a good source of protein. Nuts, yes, awesome. Thank you, everyone. So those are all great ideas. And then some other we came up with, I guess, was like shrimp or some of those legumes like chickpeas, edamame, tofu as well, egg, nuts. Those are all great ideas. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so the next piece we'll get into here are talking a little bit about some hurdles to healthy eating. So before I share some of the points we came up with in regards to hurdles, I just wanted to open it up to everyone to see if you could think of any hurdles to healthy eating. So if you have any ideas, please feel free to enter those into the chat, and then I'll just have Talia and Brianne monitor that again. So this could be things in our day-to-day lives that might make, for example, meal preparation.
So, Roshni, would you like me to read them to you?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I see loving junk food, especially crunchy things like chips and dip, cost and time,
Those are
lazy.
good ones. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Talia, and thank you everyone for participating. So this is the list that we had come up with. So appetite, slower digestion, lower energy, physical issues that may hinder your ability to shop and cook, eating alone, or also having to care for a loved one and cooking for more than one person might be some of the things that might make healthy eating a little more challenging.
All right, so now we'll talk about some tips that we have for you on how you can eat healthy. So healthy eating really starts at the grocery store. So we have a couple tips for shopping, especially on a budget. So the first one is making a grocery list, and this can save you time in the grocery store, and it will help you make healthier choices while keeping your budget in mind. And then many stores also have senior discount days, as well as some stores offer senior shopping hours. So those can be a great thing to take advantage of to, first of all, get some deals and then also access the stores when they're not as busy. Flyers are also a great resource when shopping on a budget because they advertise weekly specials. And often stuff that is in season is also cheaper as well. So you want to be keeping an eye on that. And then we recognize that it's not always possible to get to the grocery store, especially during COVID-19. So there are online delivery services, and we have a list of other resources at the end that we'll share with you as well. You can also, as I mentioned before, consider canned and frozen produce. It can be a lot cheaper, especially when availability is low, as well as it can take less time and energy to prepare. And then one thing I just want to mention about the canned fruits and vegetables, you can rinse them to get rid of the extra sodium and sugar that may be in them. All right, and then to move on to cooking, you can prepare meals when you have the most energy. So if you maybe have the most energy in the afternoon, you can do a bit of prep work for your dinner later on, or you can cook meals then and then just heat them up. You can also find recipes that require few ingredients and little preparation. And then also, you can cook once and eat twice. So, like I mentioned before, cooking enough for leftovers so that you don't have to prepare meals as much. And then here we just have a slide of some easy to prepare meals. Um, oh, someone can't see the slides. Oh, I'm not sure. But here we have some easy to prepare meals, such as a yogurt parfait, chili with a whole wheat bun, Cobb salad, stir fry, shrimp pasta and tomato sauce, or sandwiches. And these are all great to have at lunch or dinner.
So creating an emergency food supply is another way that we can overcome some of the hurdles we were talking about. So keeping an emergency food supply is especially important during the pandemic that we're currently in. So we recommend stocking up on non-perishable pantry staples such as peanut butter, canned fish, beans, lentils, whole grain pasta. So these items can help you to put a simple and balanced meal together quite quickly. And it's also a good idea to freeze whole grain bread, lean meats, poultry and vegetables, and fruit in order to reduce frequent trips to the grocery store. And here's just a list of community resources. So grocery delivery and meal delivery have been popular options, especially during the pandemic. I know Save on Foods and Superstore offer curbside pickup options. So those are great tools to access. And then Fresh Roots is a mobile grocery store that aims to bring the most affordable and nutritious food into neighborhoods facing barriers. And I had the opportunity to observe and assist with their COVID emergency food box delivery program. So they are currently set up outdoors of the Van Belay Center at the University of Alberta on Wednesdays between 11 to 1 p.m. So that's a great space to access fresh fruits and vegetables at an affordable price. So if you would like more information on any of the Fresh Fruits mobile grocery stops, you can check them out online, or also I'm happy to answer any questions you have. So I'll share our email at the end, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions about accessing any of these community resources.
Okay. Brianne, can you mute yourself? Sorry. Thank you. So just in summary of today, we just, the main points we want you to take away are to aim to fill about half your plate with vegetables and fruit, a quarter with protein foods, and a quarter with whole grains. Be mindful of calcium, vitamin D, and water intake, especially as we age. Consider preparing enough food for leftovers when you have the energy to cook. Save time and energy there. And to keep a stock of non-perishable pantry items or frozen foods on hand to help to reduce trips to the grocery store, which may be especially relevant now with COVID-19. So we just wanted to open up and ask for any questions. I know that we did get a question earlier from Danielle. I'm just going to find it again. So Danielle asked, are there any foods you recommend that people stop eating completely? I can maybe say what I think, and Roshni and Bran, if you want to jump in. I would say no. But kind of keeping in mind what you want to eat for the most part. So I think, I mean, everyone's kind of heard this term in moderation, but I think, you know, having those fun foods that you really enjoy, I think those are still important to keep in your life, as food's meant to be enjoyable, but just in moderation, and trying to have lots of those foods that have lots of vitamins and nutrients and minerals in there. So anything to stop eating completely, I would say probably no. If it is something you feel like you have too often, maybe experiment with having it a little bit less if you think that that's going to help you. Brianna, Roshni, did you want to add to that?
I think you answered that really well, Tal. I would just add on, if you are kind of following the Canada's Food Guide plate that we shared with you, that should be good to provide all the nutrients that Talia was mentioning there. So if you are having half your plate filled with fruits and vegetables, a quarter protein, and a quarter whole grains, you should be able to meet your requirements. And then it's important to have everything in moderation, as Talia said.
Thank you, Roshni. I have another question. How should I be eating daily? How many meals and how often? So that's a good question. I would say that would be fairly individual based on how many calories you burn in a day. You can also try to eat intuitively if that works for you as well, trying to see like eating until when you're full. And if you're hungry, then you should eat. Yeah, I don't know. Brianne and Roshni, do you have anything to add on that one
Yeah. What Talia said, like kind of listening to your body when it's hungry. We generally recommend like 3 meals a day, and then if those are spaced out more than 3 to 4 hours, then having a snack, and that avoids you from getting so hungry that you maybe overeat at the next meal. But it is very based on the individual. So everyone needs a different amount of food. But if you're listening to your body, um, and you're following that plate, you should be getting enough. Does that answer your question?
Okay, I see another one. Sometimes healthier, in quotes, junk food alternatives lack taste and flavor. Do you have a recommendation of a satisfying go-to crunchy junk food? I know that this might be not what a lot of people would like, but I know that kale chips or something that is kind of different. It's you like put them in the oven with you like add some oil and salt, and they're kind of like the alternative chips. I personally don't feel like I know a ton. I don't know if Brianne and Roshni, you have any ideas on that one?
Yeah, this is not sponsored by any means, but there are some dried chickpeas and lentils that you can get. I've seen them in Superstore, I've seen them in Sobeys, and they're by the Three Farmers, and they're really high in fiber. Or you can also make them at home. So if you just take canned chickpeas and roast them in your oven, that can be a tasty snack.
All right, oops. So I have a question here. What are good sources of protein? Also, what's the difference animal protein versus plant protein? So I guess if you're saying what protein sources are a little bit more nutrient dense, meaning they have like lots of good nutrients in them and are good for you, looking for those ones that have less saturated fat. So those would be your like leaner meats, and also those like plant proteins as well have the less saturated fat and higher in protein. But also on the note of protein, keeping in mind that these animal sources are complete proteins, and the plant proteins often need to be paired. This is kind of on another topic, but they are incomplete, so you might need to eat it with other foods so that it forms a complete protein to help your body like build muscles and that sort of thing. The difference between animal protein versus plant protein, I guess nutritionally, I would just say that animal protein is a complete protein and tends to be a little higher in saturated fat and lower in fiber. And plant protein, they're typically incomplete proteins, and they tend to have higher fiber and less saturated fat. Yeah.
You could, sorry to add on, Talia, we could make our plant-based proteins a complete protein if we pair it with a whole grain. So if you are having beans or lentils and you pair them with whole grain rice or brown rice, that'll help you to make sure that you're getting the complete form of the protein, which means it has all of the essential amino acids.
Does that answer your question, though? I feel like I may have missed something. Next question, if that one was okay. What are some things that people are missing from their diet? I would say Well, something that's maybe unique to Canada that we tend to be low on is vitamin D, which is something we mentioned. But that actually, because it's not very ubiquitous in our diet, and supplementing with vitamin D is important. Um, Missing from their diet, though, also, I guess fiber tends to be something that is a little bit on the lower end in our population. So, I don't know. Would there be something else, Brianna Roshni, that you would say?
Generally, the trends show that there's lower consumption of fruits and vegetables in Canada and America. So we would recommend, again, if we follow our healthy plate model and we're having half our plate fruits and vegetables, that would also help us to meet our fiber requirements.
Yeah, that's it's actually interesting. They did like a poll even just for U of A students, and it was like a very low percentage of students were meeting the like recommended amount of vegetables and fruits in a day. And then the second part to that question was how can they include them on a budget? If we're talking about vegetables and fruits, I would say options like frozen and canned fruits and vegetables are definitely options, and they do tend to be more or less expensive. Um, but yeah, just kind of rinsing those canned ones and that sort of thing, because fresh produce can get pricey.
Yeah, I would also just add to that shopping for produce in season, because that's often like a really big one. Strawberries and berries are a lot cheaper in the summer. Um, and then in the winter, you might need to buy them frozen. So just keeping that in mind.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Um, I have one more question or another question here. If those people who are not taking animal protein and dairy products, for those people, what supplements can you take for a whole nutrient meal? Um, so I'm guessing if this would be like someone who's following a vegan diet, that's what it kind of sounds like. Um, Something for that people who follow a vegan diet would be missing out of is a vitamin B12, as vitamin B12 is only from um, animal sources. And sometimes you can see that they may consume less protein, but I would say for someone who's vegan, if also again, just to reiterate, like following that plate the best they can, and especially on the terms of protein, if they're not consuming animal protein, making sure they're pairing their plant protein with those whole grains to make those a complete protein. And then no dairy products as well. That the key things that you get from dairy is the calcium and vitamin D. So making sure someone had mentioned almonds earlier, which is a non-dairy source of calcium, taking a vitamin D supplement. Would be important to make sure you're getting those nutrients in. But Roshni and Brienne?
I think you nailed it. I was just going to say B12 as well. So that's one of the main things we see missing in vegan and vegetarian diets. So, and then, yes, we can make sure that we're getting our protein in by pairing it. So whenever we're having plant-based proteins, just make sure that we're having a whole grain source to complement it.
All right, thank you. And then, so next question is, can consuming too much, do you mean canned food, like canned vegetables and fruits negatively affect your health? I'm thinking that's what that means. Okay. I don't know. I'm going to open up that Raji and Brianna.
Sorry, I just want to clarify, was the question canned foods contribute negatively to our health? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Can consuming too much canned foods negatively affect your health?
Yeah, so we often see soups as one of the main canned foods that people are eating. And so the reason why they might not be so beneficial for our health is because they're high in sodium. So Brianne had talked about how we should be rinsing our fruits and vegetables, and then also with our beans, we should rinse them to kind of reduce the sodium. But with soups, we recommend that in order to make sure that you're not consuming too much sodium is by making soups at home. There's lots of recipes online that are super simple, and soup is one of the things that you can batch cook and have prepared for the week. So that might be a good alternative to canned foods. But I guess to answer your question, the main piece that would make it a little not as good for our health is sodium in canned foods.
Yeah, thank you, Roshni. Great. Any other questions from anyone? Got lots of great questions. Thank you so much for adding those in. This is an awesome discussion. Okay. So, are genetics important in weight and diet goals? Final question. I'll open up the floor to Brianne Roshni again.
That's a really, really good question. So genetics can affect our weight for sure. We know that obesity does have a genetic component to it, but lifestyle is also a really key element in treating things like obesity and also preventing it. So things like our diet and exercise are really key elements. So our genetics do predispose us to having a higher risk for obesity, but at the same time, lifestyle can play a really powerful part in reducing our risk and also managing it. No, Brianne, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, that was good, Roshni.
Okay.
All right, and then I have one more question here. Just if we'll share the slides with the participants. I believe we definitely can do that. We can probably just save this as a PowerPoint and we can probably send that to Danielle if that works. Yeah, we'd definitely be happy to share the slides with you.
Yeah, I believe the presentation is also recorded, and I think that's going to be sent out as well.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so if there aren't any more questions, just to go back one more slide, just quickly, Roshni.
Oh, sorry.
Just to the questions. Sorry. So if you do have any more questions that maybe you thought of later or don't feel like comfortable asking us now, you can definitely email us. So it's speakingofhealthyeating@gmail.com. Actually, Roshni, isn't it speaking of healthy or is it not? Isn't it speaking of healthy@gmail.com? Sorry, everyone. Let me just double check this here. It's speaking of healthy.
Yeah, speaking of healthy at gmail.com.
Okay, I'll just correct that right now.
Awesome. Thank you. So yes, speaking of healthy@gmail.com. If you do have any questions, we are more than happy to look into those for you. And then next slide, Roshni. If you would like some more information or more questions, you can definitely check out our social media if you're up on that. For nutrition information and our presentation updates. So we have a Facebook account if you're on there, which is just Speaking of Healthy Eating, and our Instagram, which is @SpeakingofHealthyEating as well. Yeah, and then so this year we are hosting free virtual nutrition workshops. So on the next slide. You are definitely welcome to come. We do gear these presentations towards students, as that's our main demographic. But if you're interested in any of these topics, you're definitely welcome to join. If you are interested, you can send us an email to the speakingofhealthy@gmail.com, and we can send the Eventbrite link to sign up. So yeah, so hopefully that will work for you. Yeah, and besides that, I think that's everything that we have for you today. So yeah, any last comments, or are we good to go?